Hello and welcome to part 3 of my little series about the love story between Susette Gontard and the poet Friedrich Hölderlin. I have already discussed the whole chronology of the story in detail in parts 1 and 2. So if you haven't seen those yet, you can find the links to both the parts in the video description, or you can click on the link above popping up now. In this video, I would like to add a few more personal observations. For me, this is one of the greatest real-life stories of all time. It touches me very deeply on many different levels. And why this is the case and why I think that this love story is so special and what it means to me personally as well as in general, these are the topics that I would like to discuss in this video. The love story between Hölderlin and Susette touches me because it is a sad example of how such a love as this seems to be doomed to fail in this miserable reality. How everything in this world seems to conspire against such a love, seems determined to debase and belittle and besmirch it, to strangle it and to suffocate it. What kind of a world, I ask myself, do we live in which a love such as theirs is prevented from blossoming? And yes, of course, you might argue that this was 200 years ago and that society has moved on since then and that people, at least in the Western world, are more tolerant now and that everyone is free to choose their partners and free to divorce them if they like. But let's be honest, things haven't changed that much. People are still malicious and small-minded most of the time, and noble feelings, such as theirs, are still a rarity. And it's a crying shame that such love and such noble feelings are such a rarity, even today. Instead of proclaiming their love, they had to hide it. They had to keep it a secret. They had to deny it. And they suffered greatly because of it. Both felt that such secrecy was unworthy of their love. They saw it as a disgrace, and rightfully so. Indignation burned brightly within their breasts. Susette expressed this very poignantly in her letters. She wrote, quote, "What we must suffer is indescribable, but why we must suffer it is also indescribable. I often sat there alone with my noble love in my heart, indignant that it should count for nothing. Meanwhile, vanity and emotional poverty find their way in the world. But it is easy for people to tolerate what they do not really respect. They only want to destroy what they envy, and only beings capable of feeling true love are tormented for the sake of love. I feel it more and more, that I do not fit into society, into worldly circumstances, and am better off living alone with my quiet soul." End quote. I can understand Susette so well, and I love her for that, for what she expresses in these lines. And it is also partly why Hölderlin loved her so much, I imagine. Sadly, both had to hide their love even from their family and friends. Hölderlin could not even speak freely in his letters to his friends about his love for Susette, and he lamented this fact bitterly. To one of his closest friends he wrote, quote, "I imagine you are eager to hear more about my happiness, but I must not. I have cried and raged often enough about our world in which the best things mustn't be expressed, not even in a letter sent to a friend." End quote. only with great reluctance they made their secret plans, because both of them had a deep aversion to such intrigues. As Susette wrote, quote, "I don't need to tell you how uncomfortable I feel about coming up with such schemes. Your tender soul is surely just as repulsed by them, and you suffer with me. But I am sure you won't hold it against me, because I am only doing it out of the noble intention of not letting the best and most beautiful of which humans are capable perish." End quote. Of course, if you look at it realistically, their love was doomed from the start, and it seems like they never seriously contemplated to defy social conventions and elope with each other. They must have realized that there was no realistic scenario in which they would find happiness together. They would have been outcasts. They would have had to fend for themselves. But how? I mean, Susette would have been totally penniless and disowned by her family and her husband, and Hölderlin never had much money to speak of either. There was absolutely no basis for a life together. And woe to the world, I say, where such is the case, where two people who love each other deeply can't be together just because rigid social conventions make it impossible for them to earn a living and make ends meet. So yes, it was utterly doomed from the outset. And yet, there is an invincible heroism, a heroic, defiant, intrepid invincibility in the way they stood by their love. Despite all the obstacles and all the suffering, Hölderlin and Susette both managed to maintain their staunch belief in the power of love and in the benevolent divine order of which it is an expression. Susette wrote, quote, "So let us walk our path with confidence and feel happy in our pain, wishing that it may remain with us for a long time, because it evokes such noble feelings in us and strengthens our resolve. Let us never fail love, and always remain true to one another. Let us trust in the love that kind nature has placed within our hearts, that it may ripen there towards its highest purpose. We short-sighted beings may still find it a mystery, yet we feel ourselves ennobled by it, striving towards something greater, incapable of giving nourishment to any base or unworthy feeling, and in this faith safe against the infectious evils of this world. Let us thank fate for every flower that we find together." End quote. Now, the very prosaically minded might be inclined to argue that perhaps they were deceiving themselves, that they allowed themselves to get carried away, that they merely offered each other the opportunity to live out their romantic fantasies which had little to do with reality, that perhaps they were nothing more than projection screens for one another's longings and needs. But is that really such a terrible thing? After all, they were capable of giving each other exactly what they needed. They offered one another a sense of fulfillment. They seem to have found precisely what they have been searching for in each other. They might have exaggerated their feelings, magnified them maybe, indulged in them, and reveled in their suffering to some extent, and lost themselves in fantasies that bore little resemblance to reality, that ran counter to their everyday lives and could not possibly endure in the real world. But perhaps that is precisely why they did it, to escape that wretched reality, because they could not find happiness within it, the happiness they truly longed for, a happiness only they could give to each other. And that is why, I think, they suffered so deeply, because that very happiness was denied to them, because they were forbidden to be together even though they were the only ones capable of making each other happy. And they definitely could make each other happy. They were happy, at least for a while. Which is more than one can hope for. Only very few lucky souls have the good fortune to ever experience such a love, such fulfillment. And this is another reason why their story touches me so deeply. Because despite all the suffering they had to endure, they at least had the great fortune to experience such an extraordinary love. They lived what I, and I guess most other people, can only dream about. It is such a rarity. It is such almost a miraculous event when two souls meet that are so compatible, so deeply in harmony with one another, that two souls resonate on the same pitch, the same frequencies, that they are so perfectly aligned. Two souls that flow into each other so seamlessly and effortlessly, completing one another to form a beautiful, harmonious consonance. As Hölderlin wrote in one of his Diotima poems, "Bound by an unfathomable kinship, our innermost beings had known each other long before our eyes ever met." And in his novel Hyperion he wrote, quote, "What are millennia compared to that one moment when two souls recognize each other and come together like this?" End quote. And Susette wrote, "My spirit, my soul, they are both reflected in you. And you are so entwined with me that nothing can separate you from me." End quote. Blessed are the man and the woman who find their other half, who find a home with each other so completely. Blessed are the man and the woman to whom the goddess of love is so gracious and so kind. In a letter to a friend, Hölderlin wrote, quote, "I've never been happy in love, and I don't know if I ever will be." End quote. But that was before he met Susette. Despite the tragic and hopeless circumstances of their love, I call Hölderlin very lucky indeed, because he was blessed with the experience of such a fulfilling love. It is a great and rare gift to be loved by a woman in the way that Hölderlin was loved by Susette. It must be considered the greatest happiness on earth to encounter a soul that is capable of echoing the feelings of one's own soul. It is a blessing to meet a kindred spirit in this dark wasteland called Earth. It is my greatest desire in life to experience a love such as this. For me, it represents the greatest fulfillment. And yes, even with all the pain and the heartache and the drama, I wouldn't want to miss any of it, because it's a divine drama, and because it's the most precious and exquisite pain of all. It's worth 1,000 common lives of the sort that I am forced to live, and I guess most other people too. And yes, I would be prepared to suffer for this kind of love. Because, for me, there is no better reason to suffer. Reading through Susette's letters, I find it so very touching. The way she talks to Hölderlin, the kind of language she uses. There is such sweet and affectionate tenderness in her words. It really melts my heart. Let me read you some of my favorite passages. Firstly, there are the passages in which she expresses her love for him. And I quote, "No one will ever love you as much as I do. My spirit and my soul are reflected in you. If you could feel how often your beautiful image blossoms to life within me, you would also feel how everything around me must yield to it, and how every quiet sensation within me awakens that one great feeling I have for you, the single feeling that makes me wholly yours. You are imperishable within me, and you will remain so as long as I live. If only you could feel how deeply I feel for you, how the most sacred moments of our love hover before my soul. As long as you love me, nothing can bring me down. You hold me aloft and guide me along the path of beauty. My lively imagination has painted our past for me so beautifully, especially those blessed hours of our first new love, when once you said, 'Oh, if happiness were to last but half a year.'" End quote. And then there are the passages in which she tries to alleviate his self-doubts and in which she expresses her deep admiration for his talents and abilities. Quote, "Nature, which has bestowed upon you so many noble powers, a lofty mind, and deep feeling, has destined you to become a noble, excellent, and happy man, and to prove it in all your actions. Your poems were my morning prayer. They wrapped my loving heart in a gentle, tender melancholy, and drew me ever closer to your heart. Thus I returned once more to life with renewed courage. You are too rich in powers, and your inner being is too full to remain only for yourself. It is a necessity for you to share yourself, to speak out of the very best within you. And if at times you seem so despondent, it is only because you are not understood, and as a result you fail to recognize yourself and begin to doubt your own worth. If no sure path opens before you, then remain as you are, and do not dare to risk being once more overwhelmed and set back by fate. Your strength would not endure it, and you would be utterly lost to the world and to posterity, for whom you can still work even in quiet ways. No, that must not be. You must not stake your very self. Your noble nature, the mirror of all that is beautiful, must not shatter within you. You owe the world the visions that your muse inspires within you, and above all, you must think of preserving yourself. Few are like you." End quote. And lastly, in a way most touching to me, there are these small, affectionate phrases, these sweet little nothings, when she whispers loving words of affection into his ear. Quote, "You may be certain that you will receive nothing but the greatest tenderness from me. My dear, good boy of my heart, sleep gently and sweetly. May my image hover about you. Farewell, sleep well, my dearest." End quote. Yes, Hölderlin was blessed, very much so. And to his credit, he was aware of it. Reading his letters, it is quite apparent how much he appreciated her. Quote, "Do you remember those undisturbed hours when we were entirely on our own and lived for ourselves? What a triumph! Both of us so free and proud, so awake and blooming, and radiant in soul and heart, in eye and countenance, and both of us resting beside one another in heavenly peace. Even then I sensed it, and did say so. One might wander the whole wide world and scarcely find anything comparable. And with each passing day, I feel this confirmed more severely." Therefore you may forever be certain of my fidelity. Many people distinguish themselves in one way or another. But a nature like yours, in which everything is united in such an intimate, indestructible, living harmony, that is the pearl of our time." End quote. So even though the love was tragic, it was and is glorious in my eyes. Partly because it was tragic. That's what makes it so romantic. And is it not a sad truth that far too often the passionate spark of romance dies down when love is fulfilled and becomes complacent? Aren't long-term relationships and marriages all too often the coffin nail for romantic love? The gaping discrepancy between the real and the ideal, between the ideal of their love and the circumstances in which they actually found themselves, was perhaps the most dangerous aspect of it all. Not the fact that they served as projection screens for each other's needs. Because, we all do. As human beings, we cannot help but use each other as surfaces onto which we project ourselves, our feelings, our hopes and desires. We take from others what we need. We cannot avoid it. We cannot avoid fantasizing, idealizing, and embellishing. We all carry our own longings and desires. And people and things, and indeed the entire world, become mirrors of our inner lives. And if they were happy within their shared romantic dream, if they truly found themselves in the roles they gave one another, and willingly embraced them, then there is nothing objectionable about it, in my view. The real problem was that this beautiful dream could not be sustained. They tried to retreat into it, to escape reality, to escape their circumstances, to construct an ideal island of happiness, but such a thing could not endure. It was doomed from the outset. The dream and the ideal could not survive under the conditions of everyday reality. The real and the ideal collided, crashed violently into one another. And that collision could only end in tragedy. But was that their fault or the fault of reality itself? How far should one adapt oneself to reality? And how far should one remain faithful to one's convictions and assert oneself against reality? How firmly must one remain grounded in the facts of life if one wishes to avoid plunging into complete unhappiness? Personally, I have little desire to do so. I would rather consciously and deliberately cultivate my romantic fantasies, lose myself in them, defend them against reality, at all costs. I want the ideal, not the merely real. I believe that reality ought to bend to the ideal, to the idea, to our needs, our visions, our creative power, not the other way around. And that is precisely why I advocate the romanticization and the poeticization of reality. And I see in the love of Hölderlin and Susette a prime example for the romantic struggle of the ideal against the real. The struggle of the ideal to assert itself against the narrow confines of everyday reality and of what we usually perceive to be possible or impossible. The only limitations are the ones we set for ourselves. The world has to be romanticized. We have to fight for a world in which a love such as this can thrive, can unfold itself to its full glory. We have to believe in it, in spite of adversity. We have to stay firm in our will to romanticize and poeticize and idealize and optimize in the face of adversity. A love such as this mustn't perish. It must be nurtured, even if it may be adorned with illusions. For as I said, people interpret the world in an illusory, highly subjective way anyway. Humans will always interpret the world in whatever way proves most useful to them. That's how it has always been. And for me, it is most useful, most beneficial, most fulfilling and rewarding to interpret existence in a romantic, poetic way. But most people don't dare to. People unnecessarily destroy their own happiness, as well as the creative, reality-shattering, reality-transforming potential that lies within them, because they believe they must conform, because they believe they must be realistic, whatever that means. But so much more would be possible. And that is precisely what I want to get at. The untapped creative potential within us, of which we are scarcely aware. In the end, everything comes down to this delicate balance, this narrow ridge between the real and the ideal. How these two might approach one another, how they might be reconciled and brought into a meaningful equilibrium, how they might be made to harmonize, how they must be tempered. It is the challenge of learning to walk that precious line without breaking or falling, to remain capable of living while holding the tension between those two poles. To unite these two opposites of the real and the ideal is, in my view, the great challenge, the great feat, the masterpiece, the ultimate task of life, and the highest art of living. So much for my impassionate plea of the day. But I want to end this video on another note. In more than one way, Hölderlin seems to have anticipated the future. There are extraordinary similarities between his life and his work. In his novel Hyperion, which I talked about in the first video, Diotima, who is the love interest of Hyperion and who teaches him everything about love and with whom he feels deeply connected, Diotima dies, and Hyperion remains alone and spends the rest of his life as a hermit. Just as in real life, Susette died, and Hölderlin became also something of an isolated hermit in his tower. Like Hyperion, Hölderlin was far away when his love died, and like Hyperion, he was too late. She was dead before he could see her again. It seems like in his poetic imagination, Hölderlin had found a deep prophetic truth that manifested itself in real life. But there remains a glimmer of hope. In the novel, Hyperion and Diotima were convinced that even if they were separated by death, they would never really lose one another. They would always stay connected to each other, and that eventually they would be reunited in some form or other. Hölderlin expressed similar sentiments in some of his poems, like for example in Menon's Lament for Diotima, where lovers are separated but eventually reunited in some kind of mythical hereafter. And I would like to read to you the beautiful last stanza of that poem. But of course I have to use an English translation, so alas, it can only be an approximation of the German original. Come, it was just a dream. The blood-stained pinions are healed now. Renewed, all hopes are alive. Much there is yet to find. Much still remains. And whoever loved as we did must go, must follow the path of the gods. And you, blessed hours, will you guide us? You, brave and youthful ones, Oh, remain, holy presentiments. Stay, pious prayers. And you, inspirations. And all you kindly genii, who gladly abide with the loving, stay with us yet a while, till we meet on common ground, there where the blessed are all ready again to descend, there where the eagles dwell, the stars, the messengers of the Heavenly Father, there where the muses are, whence heroes and lovers arise, there we may meet on some thawing island, where our kind at last in blooming gardens is joined, where songs are true and longer the springs in beauty last, and our souls may embark on a new life's cycle. So one can only hope that if Hölderlin has correctly predicted other things, he might also be proven right in this regard, that love truly knows no boundaries, and that there is no loss, that separation is just an illusion, and that, in truth, we are all eternally connected. And with these words I say, good night out there, whoever, whatever, and wherever you may be. Bye-bye.